Look, I'm not going to waste your time on this one. I'm just making chocolate chip cookies, but with brown butter and chunks of toffee. I don't think I need to sell you on this. In fact, if anything, I probably would have to work to sell you on not eating this. So why don't we just make the thing? First things first, your recipe. We'll start with the butter because that'll be one of the longest parts of the process. And it'll need some time to cool off while you compile the rest of the dough. If you don't know what brown butter is, it's basically a gift from the gods. It's butter that's been heated long enough to toast the milk solids to take on an intense, nutty, and savory yet sweet profile. So, to a pan on medium heat, add 2 sticks of butter or 227 grams. We're going to be here a while. You'll see frothing, foaming, and blah blah blah, but the main thing you need to be on the lookout for is browning and that distinct nutty smell I mentioned a moment ago. You'll also want to agitate your pan occasionally. Some say constantly, but I've found that as long as I'm there watching, I've developed a good sense of when it needs a little swirl. Overall, it takes around 10 minutes to brown your butter, but it'll vary depending on your stove. I should also note that you'll want to brown the butter in a heavier pot or pan, so that there's less rapid fluctuations in heat and thus less chances to burn the butter. This would be especially important on something like an electric stovetop that cycles the heat on and off. As soon as you see it, it'll look like this, and you'll have to imagine the smell. Pull it. Now, let it cool for at least 10 minutes. The reason for this is that you don't want your eggs to cook when you add them to the butter. In the meantime, let's whisk together our dry ingredients, namely 250 grams of AP flour, it's about 2 cups, 1 teaspoon of baking soda, and 3/4 teaspoon of salt. Make sure it's homogenous, and then let's chop up some chocolate and toffee. And, well, yeah, that's pretty much it. Chop up the toffee and then the chocolate. Now, assuming it's at least 10 minutes later for you, go ahead and preheat your oven to 375 degrees. Then, to your brown butter, add in 75 grams of granulated sugar, followed by 225 grams of brown sugar, and whisk to combine. The reason for the higher ratio of brown sugar is the chew. Typically, more brown sugar means more chew, and more granulated sugar means more crisp. Brown sugar is also slightly more acidic than granulated, which means that in combination with baking soda, it'll offer less spread and more rise. It'll be a little grainy looking, but that's alright. Your eggs are going to fix that. Speaking of, crack in 2 eggs and whisk until smooth. And finally, pour in 2 teaspoons of vanilla extract. I've got some homemade stuff here made with a decent little local whiskey. Now, because I put my wet in a smaller bowl and my dry in a bigger bowl, I'm going to pour the wet into the dry. I know that it is the wrong order. Truthfully, I have never had an issue doing this the opposite way that one should do in a recipe like this. I realize it could clump and be messy when you try to pour wet into dry, but my experience has just not proven this to be true in baking cookies. Your mileage may vary, and in any event, this isn't a Clerks 2 situation. It's going to be alright. And no, I am not going to explain that reference. Once no dry spots remain, fold in the chocolate and toffee, and I should note at this point that this recipe is a riff on Rick Martinez's brown butter and toffee chocolate chip cookies. The main difference here is the proportions of granulated sugar to brown. I really love a heavy ratio in favor of brown sugar and chocolate chip cookies, so I amped up that bit in particular. I also tend to skip the refrigeration step for the dough. I've just never been able to tell the difference in texture or flavor by letting it chill in this case, so why wait longer than I have to? I would also recommend, if you're up for it, mixing in a tablespoon or so of red miso paste. It does wonders. Portion out your cookie dough into 2-ounce balls, yes, I like big cookies, on a parchment-lined baking sheet, and bake for 11 to 13 minutes. Or until golden and delicious. Yes, like the apple, but better because this will rot your teeth out. And, well, that's really it, isn't it? Maybe give it 5 minutes to cool off, 10, I guess, would technically be more appropriate, but come on, they're cookies. I can't expect you to wait, and I definitely didn't. So, as usual, be sure to like, to subscribe, and whatever else it is you do that makes you happy and isn't disgusting. Or do that, I guess. I just don't really want to hear about it, probably.